Hello, everybody. I'm Tom Murray, the Director of Innovation for Future Ready Schools, a project of the Alliance for Excellent Education located in Washington, D.C. Future Ready Schools is a collaboration between the Alliance and a vast coalition of over 60 national and regional partner organizations. The goal of Future Ready Schools is to maximize learning opportunities for all students and to help school districts move quickly towards student-centered learning. The effort provides educators with resources and support to ensure that local strategic and technology plans align with instructional best practices, are implemented by highly trained teachers, and maximize personal and authentic learning experiences for all students, particularly those from historically underserved communities. As always, the hashtag for today's webinar is Future Ready. Thank you so much for making an investment in your time and joining us today. I'm your host on this webinar, From the Classroom to the District, Applying SEL into Everyday Practices. Joining me today, and I couldn't be any more excited for this panel of three incredible educators. We have Alejandro Diaz Granados, the 2021 DC Teacher of the Year and National University Teacher of the Year in 2020. We have Zandra Jo Galvan, the Superintendent of Greenfield Union School District in California, the President of CALSA, the California Association of Latino Superintendents and Administrators, and Leah Jelke, the 2018 North Dakota Teacher of the Year and National University's Teacher of the Year and a top 10 finalist in the 2020 Global Teacher Prize. Like, wow, you are all in for a treat. So I'm going to ask each of you to take a moment, if we could, to introduce yourselves. Alejandro, let's start with you.
All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Alejandro Diaz Granados. I teach 4th and 5th grade ELA and social studies in Washington, D.C. The community that I serve has been underserved for, quite some time. But, our students at our school bring so much joy and so much culture to our school environment. So I'm so excited to share my experiences here and just honored to be on this panel.
Awesome, Alejandro. And just recently was at that Teacher of the Year celebration at the White House. So congratulations to you, my friend. Zandra, let's go out to California and over to you. Oop, Zandra, you're muted. If you could.
Thank you so much. How about that? Better? All right. Thank you, Tom, so much for allowing me to be here with all of you fabulous people. Honored to be the superintendent of Greenfield Union School District in Monterey County, the Central Coast in California. Also super honored and privileged to be the superintendent of a school district that I attended as a young girl. And so walking through classrooms is just super exciting for me. It's exciting for me. And I just look forward to having the conversation on social emotional learning and what we can do to just really help support those that we serve.
Fabulous. And Leah, over to you.
Hi, thanks for having me today. I'm Leah Jelke, and I teach EL English to high school students in Fargo, North Dakota. And my students are from over 20 different countries and speak even more languages. On top of that, they're not just bilingual, they're multilingual. And our style here is a sheltered instruction style. So the kids get EL specific classes in science, math, social studies, and they are able then to also join their peers at this traditional high school we're in with other classes like sewing and gym. So it's a wonderful program that we have here. And my students are some of the most wonderful people because I'm able to learn from them every day something new about their culture, just about different things, different ways. So I love my students so much because I learn from them. And one of the things that we do with my higher level students is we're able to create stories about how they came to the United States and publish them and send them around essentially the world. We publish about 600 books a year, and we're able to have the students go out and really take ownership and advocate for themselves and go to universities and share their stories. And that helps our community here in North Dakota learn about their new neighbors, and it helps our students develop their writing.
So awesome. Well, thank you for the three of you joining. If you're watching live, you can certainly understand why I'm so fired up to have them here today. What an incredible group. But we also want to take a moment to recognize and thank our partners at National University for their incredible support. And we encourage you to check out many of the free tools and resources that they offer through the Harmony SEL portal to support the work we'll be talking about today. Check out their work, by the way, at harmonysel.org. Incredible resources that we stand behind and support. Incredible team there as well. Great resources for your team and your district. So with all the continued uncertainties of the COVID-19 pandemic, The student learning experience, as we all know, has been in flux, creating such a state of constant change for our students, our teachers, and our communities. From masks and distancing to various guidelines in different states, school still looks different in many of our states, and teaching looks different. And let's face it, learning quite often is looking different. While we all have these different reactions to these changes, it's really imperative, as we know, that school and district leaders continue to prioritize mental health and wellness within their communities while simultaneously prioritizing self-care. Addressing the social and emotional needs of students and staff members has always been a pillar to success, and let's face it, has never been more as important as it is today. However, with the heightened fear and anxiety due to the pandemic, many districts recognize that these embedded experiences are just no longer nice to have. They're really an essential part of each school day. But with all that's on educators' plates right now, how do we ensure that our people, both students and staff members, are supported? So let's dive right into that conversation. And we've been at Future Ready very intentional in who we asked to join us today, because you're going to hear from the elementary level, you're going to hear from the high school level, and then you're going to hear from the district level, really that all-encompassing, all K-12 experience that we're going to be able to bring today, and also some really practical pieces. So Alejandro, we are going to start with you. We're going to start at the elementary level. So let's start right here in Washington, D.C., in our own backyard to Future Ready Schools with you. Tell us, if you would, a little bit about your school, your students, your approach to teaching and learning, and how things have shifted for you throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So my school is located in Ward 7 of Northeast DC. So this is on the opposite side where most of the monuments are. However, DC is a really interesting city because our students, they come to school with so much culture. We have the museums here, we have the Smithsonian that we can always visit and we learn throughout the city. But my students come to school with so much culture that they share with the staff at our school, and they share their experiences and they share where their grandparents grew up, and they share things throughout their neighborhood. So we learn throughout the entire neighborhood and throughout the entire city. And through COVID and virtual learning, that kind of put a halt to some of our experiential learning activities. However, it forced us to think more and be a lot more culturally responsive, and a lot, now that we were almost inside the students' homes, seeing them virtually, we were able to do a lot more things with them. What really made us think outside the box, students were cooking and sharing meals on virtual instruction. I was able to share different parts of my life. They got to meet my pet dog. They got to see so much of what was going on in my life. So, education just shifted completely. And, the relationships between myself and the students and other staff members completely shifted. And it wasn't just a career that we go in and we clock in and leave. Not that we ever did that before, but now it's a lot more intentional. I know so much about my students' families and their grandparents and the issues and problems that they're going through, but also the traditions and holidays that they celebrate. So, the relationships have gotten a lot stronger, even though we've gotten a lot farther away. But now that we're all back in person, it's excellent to just be able to build on what we've learned through virtually and come back into the classroom and just continue that. So, it's been a shift, but education has always been shifting. So, we are used to this, and, we made best with what we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And, one of the things that I just mentioned prior to turning it back over to you is how we all know SEL has absolutely been a vital pillar of student success in the past, but just today, as you're starting to allude to, more important than ever before. So with so many educators watching today, let's get specific about ways in which you embed SEL strategies throughout the elementary school day. So let's kind of start at that level. We're going to ask Leah and then Zandra to do the same in just a few minutes, but talk to us about just being real practical, if we could, for our viewers at your level. What do you recommend? What does this look like? And how do you do it?
Yeah, no, excellent question, especially returning to school in a district like our own, where this past fall, we returned in person for the first time in 18 months. So we hadn't been in school since March 2020. So a lot of our students have never interacted with peers before. So our second graders, who are now second grade, the last time they were in our building, they were kindergartners. So there's a huge gap in the social and emotional skills that a lot of them would have developed when they were in person. So, one thing that I definitely used right when we entered our classroom was, you mentioned Sanford Harmony, and we used the Harmony kits. Our classroom, we used Buddy Up and Meet Up, which are two activities in Sanford Harmony, where students come and they can share different parts of their lives. They can share they meet up with a partner, they buddy up with a partner in class. They can share what's going on in their home. They can share what's going on what they do during the weekends. And this just gives students an opportunity throughout the day that we shell out that time every single day where they can just talk to each other, and then they can learn about me. So, in years in the past, students don't really have a chance to learn about their teacher and know that their teacher is a person too, and know that I like activities that they like and listen to music that they might like or eat things that they might like. So it's a really good, authentic opportunity for us to just have a conversation and for them to know that school isn't just reading science and math, that we're here to also, interact with each other, make friends and learn about each other, learn about each other's cultures, and really understand where everyone's coming from, which has made our classroom, mesh a lot better. I was nervous coming back to the school, working with students who, have never, played outside with other kids during recess before, who have never eaten in a cafeteria with over 50 people before. But all these things have been, have worked well for us as we've implemented things like Harmony into our classroom, and as teachers have, used it with fidelity. So, being intentional with the activities that we use in class and making sure that it's not just something that we mention, but something that we implement every single day, has been absolutely helpful.
That's awesome. And thanks for giving us that glimpse into the elementary level. Let's now go to North Dakota and the secondary level for a conversation with Leah. So Leah, talk to us, if you could, about some of the lessons learned throughout the pandemic and ways in which you've shifted your practice at the high school level and really what you're prioritizing right now.
Okay. So yeah, there's definitely been a big shift. I think it's interesting to hear Alejandro and how the timeline of when he and his students went back, and it's so different for every state, every district, every school. So I'm going to share my screen here and give you kind of just a little idea of what my district, what it looked like for us, because I think that's really important to understand before I kind of explain where we ended up going with it. So right away, of course, in March 2020, our district was online completely. I think most people were. So at that point, it was really important for us to make family connections. And I work specifically with EL students. And so there's already a lot of barriers. And as an EL teacher, we do work closely with families as case managers as well. So we were lucky to have some of that built in already. But in general, one thing that's interesting about our population is that a lot of those students that we work with, their parents have a very unique perception of, we respect teachers, we trust you teachers. They may have language barriers themselves. They're not able to chime in and talk to really give input in school, or they don't feel like they should because the teacher's a professional. And so that's a very interesting way to approach the learning. And a lot of times we want to be a team, but a lot of our parents don't feel comfortable. They feel ashamed they don't speak English. And so we really try to work with them to try to be that team. But they give us a lot of autonomy, which is good in some ways. And so one of our things, our shifts, was we really had to really get phone numbers that worked, really try to get in there and get communication. And one way that I was able to do that with high school students was going to where they are 24/7 on Instagram and TikTok. And so I had a Teacher of the Year Instagram. And what I did was then I gave that to my students. Here's my Teacher of the Year Instagram it's my school Instagram. You can message me on here if your internet's not working, if you have a problem. And I had almost 100% like communication with my students at that time, because they were so receptive, because it's where they're on. They're on Instagram. They're on social media. They don't check their school email. You would think they should, but I just feel they just don't. And it was a really good way for me to see they saw the message and that they were able to, if they were online, then I knew they were online. So with our high school kids, that was a great thing that when the pandemic started, we were able to keep in contact in that way. We did have our district online in March 2020, and then hybrid starting that fall, and then they all went back to in-person last year. And now we are in person, fully masked. And with our students and our community in general, it was really important. They were getting food. That was one thing. A lot of our parents got laid off of work or couldn't work because of COVID. And then we found that our high schoolers were working in place of the parents. And so the parents they saw as more elderly or older, so then they didn't want to put them in harm. So the kids would go out and, go to the grocery store jobs. And so we were wondering, where are you? Why aren't you in class at 2 o'clock? And then they would message and say, oh, I'm at work. Well, I mean, can you blame them? It's a pandemic. Like, okay, you got to give them some grace. So definitely I learned a lot more grace, a lot more relaxed. I am a former military myself, so I do have that strict side, but then I have, the flexibility of a teacher. So that was a very important thing for us to learn. And luckily our kids did have computers. It's something our district rolled out 5 years ago. They all had laptops. And the thing was being able to get them the free internet, which they qualify for with free or reduced lunch, but more of our kids needed it. So we were in an okay place there. And one thing we got creative with was I bring in a lot of speakers. We go outside the classroom a lot. We do a lot of experiential learning. So I was able to have Kaylin Allen from the Ellen Show show up as our big speaker for our literacy project. And he came in and talked about his journey of how he went from where he was to where he is now as a celebrity. So it took a little planning, but it definitely was great for the students to see. Another thing that's important, I think, with the, not just EL students, but in general, as we are shifting to the population that we're dealing with now and the trauma, everybody's gone through trauma at this point. We've all been through a pandemic. And we need to really look at it that way because we don't know what each individual family has gone through. This sign has always been part of my classroom. I've taught and traveled to over 27 different countries. And I always talk about respect and a positive attitude. And those are the two most important things. And of course, a pencil. We do relay races. Like I don't go over syllabus. I don't talk about like, this is what we're doing in class. I don't hand out books. We go outside and we do team building exercises because that's so important. I think with any high school student, my kids are mixed 9 through 12 because they're leveled. So based on their English level, they're in a class of mixed 9 through 12 graders. And so that's another dynamic that is really important to really build that awareness of each other, the social awareness, the relationship skills. Castle.org has some great, this is a icon here from there. They work with Stanford Harmony or with Harmony and Inspire and have great resources that I use in my classroom. I even give my students this specific picture here about what is self-awareness, what is self-management, and we talk about it. I mean, explicitly talking to high school students about this, you would think they know, but they don't all know. And it's really important we explicitly teach these type of things to them. And then they know why we do what we do in the classroom. So that was kind of the beginning of kind of where we were and what we do. I did have a structure in my class for kind of building on that because of what I do, but I extended it a little bit. So I know that Thomas was interested in wondering about the kind of the strategies of what we do now, right?
Yeah, go ahead and share. That's you're already cruising through, and this is awesome. And so I was just going to ask that natural follow up, like I did to Alejandro. So you keep rolling in terms of like practically, and you've been incredible in terms of sharing just practical ways. But talk to us. If I'm a high school principal, high school teacher watching this, like, what does it look like in your classroom? What are some of those recommendations you have?
Yeah, so building upon that first day. So pre-pandemic, we always built on that respect. We always built on that. We have a lot of reliability. I think one thing you notice with students, my students have been affected as EL students, refugees, immigrants with trauma in the past. Just things that change a lot. So it's really important for me to have a reliable structure in my class. And to do that, we base it on that whole, we are a team, we're working together here. And then one thing I've done ever since I taught in Ecuador and Taiwan with middle schools and elementary school is something called class leader, which I have the example on the next page, but it's rotates every day. There's a different student who pretty much writes down our objective, which is on the board, the activities, the homework, anyone who was absent that day, and then if there was any announcements or handouts. And then they help around the room that day. They're the leader. So if I need, little like, oh, can you run this to the office, or, to help, they get to be the teacher and call on students for the vocabulary word. And so a lot of times you see this in elementary school. When I adapted it for high school, I wasn't sure how it would go, but it's amazing. Like, you think about a daily high school student's schedule. I've noticed that some students go a full day with not even talking to one teacher. Like, they could sit in the back of the room and not say one thing. And it's not the teachers well necessarily, but it's just the fact there's so many kids in classes these days, and you don't get that really one-on-one communication in some schools. And so for class leaders, a time for them to come up. It rotates each day through the alphabet. And the next day, when that class leader fulfills their duties, they write on this little clipboard. And the next day, they start class. So they stand up there, they're ready to go. I sit here and I wait for them. I say, okay, class leader, let's start. The bell rings. I don't have to say anything or do anything or sit down. They start and say, yesterday was Tuesday, October, and they go through, these people were absent. This is what we did. And then it gives the people who were absent, especially with, a lot of our COVID absences these days, the idea of, oh, that's what you did yesterday. So they don't have to bother the teacher and figure out, where to get the work, because we have a packet on the wall with the work if they missed it. And so it's a really good organization strategy. It's the same start of class every day. They rotate through kids. And then of course they get their class leader candy. I have a little candy they put in their pocket for later that they can have, or a little fidget toy. And that has really been a great start to class to start the routine. Behavior management as well, because then you have kids knowing what they need to do, where they need to be, and then a student is starting. Another thing we do is mindfulness every Monday, Wednesday for 5 minutes. I put on music or a guided meditation. The kids can go wherever they want in the room, lay down, do whatever they need to do to relax. I turn off the lights and I put my head down with them and take a break. And I think that is so important these days with everything happening. I did this before COVID, but even more so, I make sure I don't skip days right now, because I notice my kids are very much needing it. On Wednesdays, I actually I bought all my high school students Play-Doh, like 50 cents at Target, or Walmart, wherever you can get Play-Doh. They each have their own Play-Doh in their own Ziploc bag. And Mondays is lights low, music on, and they just create whatever they want with Play-Doh. And they do that for 5 minutes, and that's our bell ringer after our class leader. At first I wasn't sure how high schoolers would do Play-Doh. I just started that this year, but they love it. And some of them are, whoa, they're making intricate little, things. And they all participate. I've never had a student just be like, oh, this is stupid. Play-Doh's fun for everybody. So that has really taken off. I think that's important, just to take a break. I have, they may have me 8th period, they may have me 1st period. It's just nice for them to kind of just take that break and clear their mind. We do a lot of peer teaching. And then journaling. I have been way more purposeful Tuesdays and Thursdays with COVID, and with the questions that I ask with our journals, and the time that I give them, and discussing the topics for their journal. I tell them they write for 10 minutes. I don't care about spelling. I don't care about grammar right now. I just want you to write. And literacy is one of our big goals at our high school that we are focusing on with a big grant that we have. And then whenever we can, we get out of the classroom. It's hard with COVID, but I like to take the kids outside. Also hard with North Dakota to take the kids outside at this point. This is why I use the beginning of the year to do as much outside as we can, but we try. And then the family connections, just continuing those. One thing I will probably end with here is one of the biggest things that I have changed this year is I have something called a peace corner. And I'm pretty sure I got this idea on TikTok. There's so many great ideas for teachers on TikTok. I was one, by the way, that said I would never use TikTok. March 2020 hit. And then I'm like, nah, what is this? My kids dance to this. I want to see what this is. I got on the cooking/teacher side of TikTok. Wow, I've made so many different meals, and I do not like cooking, but now I love it. I've had so many great ideas. I've learned so many great ideas from teachers on there, and it holds my attention for like 15 seconds, 30 seconds. So I can see how the kids like it. But something called a Peace Corner. In the back of my room, as you can see in the photos, I kind of created this little area. Knowing my students, I noticed last year a lot more fidgeting, a lot more not being able to sit still. Like generally, I guess every year we've noticed this. But this year I really read a lot of strategies on a lot of different neurodiversities and what helps as well. So I created an area where students can pretty much tap out for, say, hey, I need 5 minutes, no matter what we're doing. Could be in the middle of anything. I try not a test, but if it happens, they say, I need 5 minutes. So they set the timer in the Peace Corner for 5 minutes, and they get to go back there. They can sit under the table. Some do. They can sit in the beanbag. They can stand. There's some kinetic stand. There's fidget things. I had no idea how popular the Rubik's Cube would be and how many kids can solve it. I can't for the life of me. It's amazing. Like these kids just whip through this Rubik's Cube, and I'm like, I can't do it. So these are things they can just play with. I have kids that sometimes just come in right away in class, and they just grab a popper or they grab one of the things and they just sit down with it and just have it. As long as it's not making a lot of noise, I'm fine. My brain though, as an educator, military educator, flexible, yes, but if somebody's doing something that, is a little distracting or I can hear it, I immediately zone in on it. So that's been for me a big adjustment as an educator because the other kids aren't noticing it. I am. And my thing is, I want to make sure you're listening to me so I don't have to repeat. I want to make sure you get it, but I need to let go of that. That's one thing I had to learn is kind of let go of that is because I was diagnosed late in life with ADHD myself, and I can fidget and I can do stuff and listen. But I've always just had this assumption of my students that if they're doing it, they're not listening. And so it's really hard to, flip that. So that was a big mind shift for me this year. And so we have them doing something at their desks or they're taking the time in the back and they just do it now without, grabbing something without asking unless they spend time back there. I've noticed the kids who have these behaviors that would be distracting to other students, it's not distracting anymore because they're not seeking the attention from the other students. And my high school students, I've been very lucky. I guess it could go any way with different groups of students and how they handle things. But I think it's really important to set the rules and how you present something like a Peace Corner to them and give them fidget options. Now, it may look a lot different in elementary school or middle school with how a teacher presents it and handles it and lets the students handle things. But you just got to know your students and then do what's good for them. So I'd say that has been a real help and just kind of calming down everything, not trying to race through the curriculum this year and just making sure all of these social emotional aspects are taken care of. And literally I check in with every single student when they come in. At least I make a moment to say, hi, how was your night? How is it going? And making that connection because you learn a lot from that, from each student. And again, that's so hard with our overcrowded classes these days. But with COVID and this situation, we just really need to slow it down. And it is so beneficial.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Leah. And on behalf of Future Ready, also, thank you for your service. Let's head out west. We're going to go over to Zandra, looking at it from this district perspective. Zandra, your lens is different, different than Alejandro and Leah per se, as you see things as a superintendent, the chair you sit in from the district level. So talk about your district's journey throughout the pandemic and some lessons that you all have learned as well.
Absolutely. And kudos to Leah and Alejandro. You guys are doing amazing things. Just so proud of the work that you're doing in your classrooms. It's amazing. So coming out to California and as a superintendent, we quickly learned in the pandemic journey that it was all about emotional quotient and emotional intent. We had to create psychological and physical safety for those that we served. And so from the district lens, it's the classroom for students. It's the teachers, it's the educators, it's everyone on our support team that needed that psychological and just physical safety, as well as our parent community. They all wanted to know it was going to be okay. And we were that vehicle as a public entity to assure them that we were going to be okay and we were going to work together. We were going to be stronger together and better together. So as a leader, we set the tone. We invite the vibe and we distribute that love. If we don't do it, no one else can. And so the tone is set by me as the leader at the top level of the organization. And then I expect those, and we meet and we listen in, and we quickly learn people's story. I mean, we quickly learned who needed what. We learned about the family that lost their job, as Leah mentioned. We learned about the students that were, not having anything to eat that evening. We learned about the teacher that had lost a friend or a relative to COVID. I have team members that lost both their parents during this pandemic. So it was quickly, we needed to understand what people needed. And that's the social emotional learning side. It's the side that tends to that emotion as well as the other things that come with it. We knew that we couldn't get to their mind and have them doing all the academic heavy lifting if they weren't feeling confident about where they were in a space. And so what we quickly did is we pulled together a task force during the pandemic. And I definitely am the leader. And at times I need to make those big decisions, but I don't make them alone. I consult with so many different people. I work with different groups of individuals just to make sure that we are able to respond to the needs of the community. I give a lot of surveys. We did that with our parent community, our students, and our faculty, just to make sure that we were on the right track. And so I want to share with you a little bit of my screen here and show you a little bit of our slide deck here. If you can see my screen. Can you see that? Give me a thumbs up if you can. All right, so I'm going to show you a little bit about our journey and tell you things shifted, but our core values never changed. What we were as an organization prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and post-pandemic will remain the same. And when you have strong core values as an organization, you can get through the tough times. You celebrate the good times, but you get through the tough times together. And so we started with the why. The why was incredibly important. In my district, I am breaking students free from the cycle of poverty. We have a 9 out of 10 students in my district come from a home of disadvantage. I mentioned to you earlier that I grew up in this community as well. And so it is very, very dear to my heart. And the things that we do for children and their families makes a difference in their life and making sure that they have that post-secondary success. And so this that you see behind me is our Wordle that is part of our strategic plan. And so who do we serve really quickly here? I have in my district 5 comprehensive schools. And of those schools, I'm not a huge district, but I am a mighty district with heart and just making sure that we support the students that we serve. And you'll see here that 95% of my students come from a home of disadvantage. They need us. We quickly understood during the pandemic, as Leah and Alejandro mentioned, the digital divide and how important it was to address it. It was exposed and we knew that we had to do something about that. And so with that, we returned to our vision. We returned to our mission as a core district. And so we wanted to do these things that would continue to support our students in our community. And so these are simple things that we had to tend to in order for us to get through this together. And so I want to share with you, we have a strategic plan, but on the strategic plan that really addressed the social emotional side were our core values. This here is what we leaned in on so often to support each other through the social, emotional, and the wellness. And so one thing that I had mentioned to Tom here was we will not let each other fail. That was one of the core values that we leaned on so heavily during the pandemic, and we still do today. When I launched my speech at the beginning of this school year, I asked them, how are you going to take care of each other? How are you going to make sure that a colleague, a parent, a child is being served to the best of our ability? Because if we don't do it, no one else will. It is our moral imperative to tend to the needs, the emotional needs of the individuals that we serve. And then things like student success is the collective responsibility of all. Well, we know they won't learn if they don't think that we care about them. And you heard from both Alejandro and Leah, you're hearing from me now is how we nurture the relationships. Relationships are critical to success. When kids know you care, they will go that extra mile. I celebrate our staff all the time. I'm always on social media posting something about someone, just highlighting and loving on them so that they know in times of adversity that we will get through it together. And so these are just a few of our core values. And I want to share with you about the pandemic. We talked about how did we get through it? The question was like, how are we making sure that, you know, those lessons learned and how we got through it? This was a task force. I am not a huge district as you saw, but I was able to pull together over 70 individuals that were part of our planning team. And our planning team focused on these 5 key areas. So we had subcommittees that mapped during the pandemic what those outcomes were going to be for students, for staff, and for our parent community. And we had such a successful journey in bringing people together with common vision to support them. And it wasn't easy. I am part of the Salinas Valley. And so if you look here on the state and county statistics, we're an ag community. And so my zip code was in the top 4 in our county with the most COVID cases. And so these statistics I would bring to the task force on a weekly basis. I would bring it to my school board. I would bring it to our faculty so that they knew we were very serious about both the safety psychologically and safety in terms of physical safety. And so just a few things to show you what we're all about. And it goes back to the kids, right? It's back to these are our little preschool babies pre-pandemic. And this is with our school board because we have them coming in and they would do presentations to keep to our core values and aligning the vision of, you know, all means that we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that they're supported. And so these are some of our littles, just really celebrating. These are some of our schools in our district and in the state of California. We have what's called the LCAP. So it's like your strategic plan as a district that every district has to create. And you create your own goals in those actions. So in Greenfield, it's super simple. We have only 3 core values that we hold on to pre, during, and post-pandemic. One is positive school culture. That's what this webinar is all about. How do you build a trusting culture that's grounded and rooted on relationships and those communications and celebrating people? That's one of our core values before the pandemic. It remains to be that. The second one is the academics. How are you going to make sure that kids have post-secondary success? So how do we ensure that the academics are moving, that we have standards assessments, that we have the common assessments to help support them if they're not making it or they're making it and we excel them even further? And then the third one is community partnerships and how we engage our partners as levers to help do this heavy lifting. And so here's one, and this is the LCAP number 1, which is that positive school culture. Other pictures about the academics, when teacher teams come together and really making sure that we're hitting those academics hard so that we do whatever it takes to make sure our kids succeed. And then 3 is our family and community partnerships. We're very fortunate to have Cultural Arts Center in Greenfield, law enforcement that helps support us, our local Rotary, Lions, the Blue Zones Project with some really great wellness and social emotional supports, and then our community colleges and our universities. And so those are a few little pictures of just kind of the story of what we tell when it comes to how did we get through the pandemic? It was a lot of people with like-minded goals coming together. This was our fun run pre-pandemic. We cannot wait for the vaccine to be released because our littles, we want to make sure that they're safe so that in June, we've already calendared a Saturday, a community fun run to get out there and really just celebrate each other. And this was something that we do through our community engagement side of the house. And then again here, things that we do with kids that we're getting them back on buses to going on field trips because we want to make sure that they're visiting universities. Every single 6th grader in Greenfield gets to go to Stanford University. All means all. Every single 6th grader in every grade has a university field trip. Why? Because if they can feel it, they can achieve it, and they know that it's possible. And so that's a little bit about Greenfield. And so I tell you this because the trust relationships, the community as partners, that's how we navigated the pandemic. That's how we get to see little kids like this on the cover of our local newspaper because they're engaged in things that are meaningful to them, that matter. That's the starting point for them to do whatever they want in their future. And then finally, I'll end with just celebrating staff. So important with that culture of trust to make sure that we celebrate our staff members every step along the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome stuff there, Zandra. And I can hear the inbox for to apply in Greenfield like dinging as you're going through that there. And thanks for also tying in, obviously, your connections with SEL and all the incredible work that you're doing there. You shared some of your partners, some of the pieces that you have, some of the opportunities for your staff, the way you celebrate. Talk to us for just a few moments, if you would, about advice you have for other district leaders, because there's probably a lot of folks today watching saying like, I wish my superintendent was thinking like that and those types of things, right? Just being real. And so think about it. What advice do you have for your superintendent colleagues around the country and other district leaders in terms of prioritizing SEL, where we get all the like, yeah, but like, we know it's important, but right. But we also are seeing this nationwide movement, right? Because of so many things that have happened with COVID, school shootings and those kinds of things, that it really is a priority in a lot of places. But for those that are still resistant or aren't there yet, aren't truly prioritizing, or maybe they're saying they're prioritizing, but in practice, it's not really there. What advice do you have for them around that? But also talk to us for a moment about even their own self-care. We talk about our principals, our superintendents, they are busy all day long taking care of everybody else, just like our teachers. What about the self-care side of things as well? So talk to us for a couple minutes on that, Sandra, if you could.
Tom, that's my jam. I love the self-care and just making sure we love on our people and take care of them. And so social emotional learning is huge. And a few years ago, it was a bad word. Like people didn't want to give themselves permission to exercise or to celebrate and just do things that made them whole so that they can then bring their full self to others. And so for me, it's all about the leader setting the tone and giving permission to people, because they need to be given permission sometimes to do the things that they need to do. And so fitness is big, wellness is big. So for me, if you follow me on social media, I'm fitness every morning. I'm getting on there. I'm posting videos on how to take care of myself, and so that I give others and inspire others to do that. That also came to my district. And so we partnered with the local gym. We have fitness classes every morning and every after school for those people that want to come and just decompress in front of, with their colleagues and making sure that they're feeling okay. And so it's really about making sure people do take care of themselves. And it starts with the leader. My administrators know, my teachers know if they need a day. And when I go into classrooms and I notice, I was just in a preschool classroom yesterday and the lady was having a really tough time. And I know her because I taught her kids. I said, you know what, Miss Ramirez, go take a walk. I got this. I just took over the class, and she went and took a break. She walked around a little bit. She came back and she was a better person. So all the little things add up to the big things, and the relationships, the conversations when we check on people and we make sure that they're doing okay. People who are valued, people who feel that the leader and others value them will always go the extra mile. I don't even have to ask them for things. They offer it up first. And I'll tell you one last thing that we're doing. Tomorrow is Friday. We're having a lip sync battle on Zoom. So if y'all want to join us, we're doing that just for fun. And here's what I do. I invite partners to pay for things. So we have iPads we're giving away. We have Apple Watches we're giving away for people to have the courage to drum up a little quick 1-2 minute lip sync battle. So every one of the schools is going to have a team. Administrators are doing it. And it's simple. So my advice to my counterparts, my superintendent, is start small, but do simple things that would make you smile. And in turn, it's going to make a lot of other people smile. And who doesn't want to win an Apple Watch, right?
Zandra, you radiate such positivity. All three of you do on social media and all of your work there. One of the things that this webinar really has given me today, and I'm sure our viewers, is hope. You've all shared some incredible strategies from elementary to high school to the district level, really for all of us to reflect on. So let me ask you, with so much fear and anxiety in our world today, so much stress throughout our school buildings, throughout the country, what is it that gives you hope right now? Leah, let's go back to you first.
I say there's actually quite a bit. I'm just being here today, like superintendents like Zandra and teachers like Alejandro, seeing what they do in their classrooms with Alejandro and computers and technology, and Zandra and her passion. And I love the sixth graders. All those students go to the universities. That's what I'm trying to get even my high schoolers, because they don't always do that. I just love that idea. And so hearing about these things happening in other places, these amazing educational opportunities, really gives me hope. And it kind of shows that getting outside of your own district, your own school, and kind of looking towards those colleagues that are in different places. And I've learned that a lot as a global teacher of the year, and just like really looking at other countries even and seeing what they're doing. That is a source of a lot of hope for me. For specifically our school here, they actually shifted their schedule from 7:45 start time for our high schoolers to an 8:30 start time this year. So they are now preserving that 7:45 to 8:30 time for intervention for any students who just want to come in and get help, and then some teacher time to do some prep and some PLCs. And so that also gives me some hope that there is change. I know sometimes it's hard, you're in a system and you feel like things aren't changing for what you think they should be changing for, or for the betterment of the students. But seeing those type of changes really makes me have a lot of hope in the system. And then I'd say something with my students. I actually was battling COVID for about 3 weeks here. And it was pretty bad for a while, but I was, I'm back now. And just the messages that I got, I mentioned my students use Instagram and message me, but I mean, just the amount of messages my students were just, are you okay? Or where are you? What are you doing? Just that love that you get from them, that reminder that, you are instilling these values of care and of respect for other humans and vulnerability and just all these things. And you can see it reflecting in your students. I just wanted to share a little message I got from one student that was just great. She messaged me when I was like kind of in the midst of my COVID. I was in the hospital, and she said, you have to get well, right? Like you have no choice, because I will die as well if you leave us. So please continue to fight, and I will continue to pray as well. Get well soon, Miss J. Sending lots of love. And I was just like, of course I cried with that one. And I was just like, and that was actually a former student that I had 2 years ago. Even she's graduated. She's been in college for 2 years. And so, but she knew on Instagram, she knew that I was struggling. And so seeing those messages and just seeing all the things these teachers are doing in this time of need just really gives me hope for education. And it's something that I think, a lot of teachers are stepping up, because that's what we do. And it's just an amazing thing to see these days.
Yeah, you got that right. Teachers are stepping up, admin are stepping up, coast to coast. Leah, you remind me of two things. One, at Future Ready, one of our main goals is to continue to spotlight the great practices that you were talking around from coast to coast, to highlight the amazing things that happen in our schools every single day. With all the fear and anxiety, it's easy to get so focused on the negative, and we certainly don't want to ignore it because it's very, very real. But every day, amazing things are happening, and you've heard some of them here today. And so, Leah, I agree with that. The other thing, Leah, you remind me of in your reflection there, Joe Sanfilippo is one of our Future Ready advisors, and he does these 1-minute walks to work occasionally. And this past week, he shared one, and he talked about looking up and finding the smiles. And he was talking about seeing the smiles in the students, and how, if we don't force ourselves to intentionally look up and find the smiles, in the words of Joe, we can miss out on a lot too. And it really relates to what you were sharing there. Alejandro, let's go back over to you. Talk to us about what it is that gives you hope right now.
Yeah. As you mentioned, there's definitely a lot going on in school buildings, a lot of conversations, a lot of them not really focused on the positives, but there are so many positives. Honestly, one thing that gives me hope is, the opportunity to approach education differently. The conversations that we're having nationally now, how social emotional learning is now on a national stage. It was almost something that, teachers did in their classroom silently. They had this quiet book corner, or they had couch cushions, and it was like, wow, this teacher is doing something so unique and so innovative. But now, seeing that this is brought upon school-wide and district-wide and on a national level, and how students are now being able to be included in a lot of the curriculum, and the inclusiveness, and these types of conversations that, teachers like Leah, myself, and I'm sure Zandra and her district have been doing, but now having this on a national scale, and understanding that students everywhere need this. Students everywhere want to feel included. They want to feel like their learning and their culture is a part of the conversation. They want to know how their learning applies to the real world. In my classroom, we've always, learned about the community. We've always done experiential learning opportunities, but now it's embedded in our curriculum. And Zandra, I agree with you with bringing students to colleges. Actually, when I graduated with my master's from Johns Hopkins University, I brought my 3rd and 4th grade class with me on the trip, and they loved it. And they are still sending me messages about the field trip that we did. But that's something that now some of the schools in our district are now doing, bringing students to college campuses and just allowing them to see that and understanding that there's so much more to learning and so much more to school than just giving them, the simple subjects. If we really want them to master these academic subjects and we want them to thrive beyond school, we've got to fill them with so many different opportunities and experiences. And I'm just happy that these conversations are now happening at a district level and at a national level. And, everyone is really starting to see and understand that all of these things combined and giving these wraparound services for students and families really allows them to grow and really allows them to thrive beyond school. Because that's essentially our goal. We don't just want them to get good grades while they're in our class. We want them to thrive beyond the classroom so they can come back and visit us and tell us all the things that they've been doing since they've left our classroom. So, these conversations that have just been in the teacher's lounge about just different opportunities and things that we've done in our own classroom are now getting, the huge spotlight, and everyone is really seeing how important these things are. So that's, what is exciting for me. As a teacher, I didn't know if these types of conversations would make it to a national stage, but now to be able to see that, students taking field trips, even throughout COVID with masks on, are a priority. Allowing students to get out there and really apply their skills that they've learned in the classroom. Actually, a school down the street from us, there was a windstorm and a tree fell. And the entire school used that as an opportunity for a science lesson. They're outside taking notes about the roots and making predictions about why the tree fell, why it fell in which direction. I mean, just learning from their environment and understanding that, students want to learn from the real world. They want to make connections to why they're learning different things in the classroom and how it applies to the real world. So, I'm excited about that, excited that it's on a national stage now. In school, we're just reimagining school. So, I'm excited, so excited for it.
Awesome stuff. Thanks for sharing all that. Zandra, over to you. What gives you hope?
All right. Well, first, I just want to thank our partners, Harmony, Cell, and also National University, because they're integral parts in making sure that we just serve our kids to the best of our ability, right? And so what gives me hope is that kids are resilient. They are resilient, and they couldn't wait to get back into our classrooms. We just culminated Q1, and to be able to walk into classrooms, even with all of our masks, and to be able to sit next to a kid and help them with their writing, that gives me hope. To be able to side by side talk with the teacher about what they're excited about teaching, that gives me hope. To meet in the parking lot with the family who's just coming to find out how can they have access to some digital platforms, that gives me hope. Getting our kids back on school buses, rolling to universities in every single grade, like that gives me hope. Being able to lead, and I'll tell you, Tom, I know there's a lot of superintendents that are leaving this gig, but I think I was born for this. I love being a superintendent because I get to set the tone and give the hope that our community, our kids, and our team members deserve to have.
Absolutely. Well, I will tell you, the three of you give me incredible hope, and I would put my babies under all of your leadership at any day of the week. That's for sure. And appreciate you having you today. Well, I know lots of people are going to be watching this today live and then also after the fact. And I know they're going to want to follow your work. So one final question, 10 seconds or less, if you could, what's the best way for people that are watching today to connect with you on social media or follow the work that you're doing so they continue to be inspired? Zandra, go back to you first.
All right. I'm on all the big. So Twitter at ZJ Galvan, Instagram at Zan Galvan. I'm on LinkedIn and on Facebook. You can find me with my name.
Awesome. Alejandro.
I am on Twitter and Instagram. Both of them are at That DC Teacher. So very simple. That DC Teacher on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. And Leah?
Yep, on Instagram and Twitter at NDToy 2018, and then Facebook is Leah Jelke, North Teacher of the Year.
Awesome. You all are incredible. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. And we are officially out of time. So thank you once again, Alejandro, Leah, and Zandra, for sharing this information with our districts. And even more importantly, for all the work in this area you do to support students and staff each and every day. We also, again, want to thank our partners at National University for their support and encourage each of you to check out the many free resources we're referred to today that they offer through the Harmony portal. Don't forget to check out their work at harmonysel.org. I do want to remind our viewers as well that information about Future Ready Schools can be found at futureready.org. We continue to challenge school district superintendents to join the over 3,500 others that have signed the Future Ready District Pledge. We also encourage our school and district leaders to join us at one of this fall's virtual events. You can find those at futureready.org/virtual. I also want to encourage our viewers to get involved with our growing strands, from district leaders, technology leaders, to principals, to librarians, to instructional coaches. We've vastly expanded the reach of Future Ready Schools in recent years. And check out the private Facebook groups if you're there as well for ongoing activities, to stay connected and to hear these stories of inspiration literally each and every day. So thank you so much, Alejandro, Leah, and Zandra, as well as thank you to each of you, our viewers, for joining us today. Don't forget to connect with us on Future Ready, on Twitter at Future Ready, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Future Ready Schools. If you missed any of today's conversation, it's going to be archived at futureready.org/webinars. Thank you again for joining us here at Future Ready Schools. Have a fabulous day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.